The Boise Airport moves to solar. This comes by the Boise Dev by Margaret Carmel. The city of Boise is moving closer to its goal of powering city facilities with 100% clean energy by 2030, with the approval of a power agreement with Idaho Power to purchase enough energy from the Black Mesa Solar Energy Facility in Elmore County to power the Boise Airport and Lander Street water renewal facility through 2043. The agreement was approved ununanimously by the Boise City Council, and Mayor Lauren McLean commended the city staff for their work. Quote, "This gets us ahead of schedule, and I know we will beat those goals, and it is because of the commitment of our staff, the community partnership with Idaho Power, and so many people involved along the way, including our residents, who really want us to lead and recognize this will save us money in the long run by purchasing power at rates determined today for the next 20 years, and it is clean power." To give some context, Lander Street and Boise Airport make up 11% and 15% of the city's total electrical use, respectively. The city's largest user is the West Boise Water Renewal Facility, which uses 30% of the city's power. The city pays roughly $1.5 million a year for the power at Lander Street and the airport. Now, the power from the solar farm will not directly be piped to the Boise Airport and Lander Street. Instead, the city will pay Idaho Power directly towards these resources and lock in their rates so the company can keep investing in its energy transition while not forcing rate hikes on consumers who don't have those aggressive goals. The power coming to the airport and Lander Street will not be any different, and it will not add instability to those two facilities. But what this agreement does is confirm Boise's rates for electricity through 2043. In the first 2 years of the contract, the city will pay a premium toward the power from the solar facility, toward getting the facility up and running. And then by the third year, the power costs will be the same for the city. By the other years, the city is expected to be paying less for the electricity from this facility than any other Idaho Power consumer. The city will be also paying into a contingency fund because state law prohibits localities from taking on debt without voters' permission, and also to ensure consumers who don't want a faster transition to renewable resources don't see a price hike if the city backs out of the deal. This $810,000 contingency is being funded out of the Airport and Water Renewal Enterprise Fund, meaning they're paid for out of operating revenue for both facilities. The funds will be refunded to the city in two parts, one in 10 years and the other at the end of the contract in 2043. The Idaho Public Utility Commission will still need to sign off on the agreement formally. All this to say, the approval of this power agreement is a significant step forward for the city of Boise in its goals for powering the city's facilities with 100% clean energy by 2030. The agreement will allow the city to lock in rates for energy for the next 20 years, which will save money in the long run. It will also help reduce the city's carbon footprint and support the development of renewable energy in the state. The agreement is also notable because it is a public/private partnership between the city of Boise and Idaho Power. Which, for any of you that have listened for any length of time, know that my position on renewable stuff, specifically solar and wind, is a little bit rocky. I think totally that solar is an amazing resource, but sadly, I think it won't be a really, really useful tool until battery technology kind of catches up, where we can sit there and be like, yes, we just stored all this energy from the sun throughout the day when the grid isn't being taxed as much. Most people are at work and at businesses and not at home, and so the cost and the demand for electricity has gone down, but you really need that energy in the evening. But with batteries, that works well with solar, because during the day, those solar rays could be charging up massive industrial-sized batteries or supercapacitors or whatever we figure out, and then during the night, they could easily be metered out through those giant reserves through the evening, and we could truly have this nice, very cheap, very affordable, renewable energy. But that's just on the face value. I do know that most of the solar panels are manufactured overseas, which obviously I would say it's a good thing for us to not be dependent on China nearly as much as we are for our manufacturing and resources. It should be something that we do here in the U.S. so that, especially with power, if we're trying to move over to solar, right, we are energy independent so that we build all of our own solar. We have all the resources, all the assembly lines, everything here. So if, for instance, a World War III looming on the horizon were ever to happen, it wouldn't affect our energy production, and also for the amount of jobs it would bring to the U.S. On the flip side, I've many times talked about that nuclear, I think, is a way better option. But in this case, I will say I think it's a really wonderful deal that Boise has gotten here, especially with most of the time if you've ever had one of those salesmen for solar come and talk to you and stuff, usually for like trying to put solar on your own house, you really don't get that return on investment back until about, I think it's like 4, 5, 6 years or something like that. It keeps coming down. I remember when I was younger, it was like 13 years. So if you're going to live in the house for a long time or the rest of your life, then yes, investing in solar for your home is a really, really smart idea. And I think part of that, not 100% when we're talking about our own power grid for like the whole community, right, can kind of be jumped out a little bit. If Idaho Power is sitting there and Boise's like, yes, we're going to put our ticket, we're going to put this money down, and for the next couple of years, we're totally into it. I think that's a good thing, especially with Idaho growing, specifically Boise just booming, shall we say, that they've kind of locked in these power costs, and then part of that lock in that cost is that they're having renewables. I mean, you can take the good with the bad. I think the renewables, you have issues you've seen over in California where they've really pushed for that, and especially at a national level over in Germany, where it has just wrecked their economy, where I don't think the technology is just not there yet. The efficiency of the panels are, but the power banks and the batteries to kind of store and be that substation for that in-between just really, really aren't there yet, rather than countries where they've stuck with coal and natural gas or other things that are a little bit cleaner than coal, shall we say, or with France where they've leaned into nuclear. They don't have nearly the horrible cost of energy, and they have way more reliable energy to consume, shall we say. I feel like I'm repeating that point a lot. But when you're talking about a power grid, its primary function is to deliver power regularly, reliably, and affordably. Because if you have a grid that reliably and regularly can deliver power, but it's not affordable, well, who cares? Cool, you've got this power available, but most of your populace can't even use it. Well, in that case, you just might as well have done it for the military alone and not for the populace. On the flip side, if you have really affordable energy, but it's not reliable, but it's cheap, well then cool, people can use it, but most of the time they're going to have to come up with their own solutions. And then vice versa on that last part, and then you have the last one where it's affordable, it's reliable, but maybe it's not as clean. Which I would argue that those two other ones, that affordability and reliability and kind of availability right there, kind of are the biggest ones. Clean is something we want. We definitely don't want to be polluting the environment. God has given us this world. We should be good caretakers of it and be responsible with it. All power to it. I totally agree with that 100%. But with that said, also human needs sit above the needs of, shall we say, other things, that we are image bearers of God, and thus we should put human needs first, above that of the animals and everything, because at the end of the day, they're animals. Now I can hear the nationalists, how could you dare you say that? What about the bears and blah, blah, blah? Well, one, God has made them really good at adapting. We've seen that, like really, really good, where they can adapt and to their surroundings and different things that they need. And also, I would argue to you that the amount of carbon emissions that a volcano spews out into the air compared to what our combustion engines and heavy industry do on the planet is far, 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 far less. Now, you could make the argument with coal, but the amount of coal plants and coal generation that's being done in the world is lower and lower. Honestly, if we're looking towards renewable energies and we're looking towards trying to save the environment and global warming and stuff, I think we should talk a lot more about China and a lot less about America, where we're getting all these solar panels from China, right? We're getting all these wind turbines and batteries, and they're manufacturing it, right? But how do they manufacture that? Well, they have tons of coal plants because the Chinese economy needs tons of power to do all that manufacturing, and they need it cheap. They need it cheap because if they're going to get that international trade, they need that production to be cheap. Well, how do they get that production that cheap? Well, because power's that cheap. They put just tons and tons of coal plants that just burn tons of coal, which is one of, I will agree from what I've read, one of the most polluting ways that you can do renewable energies, and it is not good. Or not, they're not even renewable. What am I saying? I kind of flipped my words around there. That is the least renewable thing you can do. The amount of carbon emissions and soot and things that coal generation plants put in there is horrible. We should at least say, China, hey, we're going to stop the amount of coal we're giving you. We're going to bring that back. You need to invest more in natural gases or oil or something, which burns way, way cleaner, especially for the populace there and different things. But I think that should be a discussion. If you really believe global warming is an issue, the United States and Europe are not the problem. The problem is China and the developing countries in the world, and we should find cleaner, affordable solutions for them. That is the way, if you really think that global warming is an issue and you're worried about carbon emissions, that's the way you're going to do it. Because if you can raise the poverty level or make power cheaper, more affordable, easy, and cleaner in those third world countries where they're burning different dung and wood, which is even worse than coal, if I remember correctly, in some areas, if you're not using a proper filter and stuff. If we give them cheaper ways like natural gas and things that, yeah, it's not, zero carbon emissions, but man, it's going to half the amount they're putting out. I think that's a way more valuable argument than talking about the U.S. and its need to change to more renewable stuff. And especially here in Idaho. Most of our power comes from hydro, so it usually rubs me wrong when they're talking about Idaho needs to be more renewable energy. What are you talking about? More than half the state's entire power comes from dams and hydropower. Calm down. We even have I think it's like a geothermal power station in the south somewhere. I can't remember what town it's near, but you can actually see it from satellite where they got all these pipes going to different vents that they've hooked up, and that just churns all the time because the natural heat that the earth gives off, which is another really cool discussion, but I'm not getting into that rabbit hole. Anywho, I think this will be good in the long run for Boise, definitely getting those energy rates locked in, independent of its clean energy or renewable energy, whatever else. I think having those rates locked in will be good, especially for the growth of Boise and any industry that wants to be in there to have that consistent, affordable, expected type of cost for power. And then I think solar's a good thing, and hopefully they'll get the battery technology figured out by, 2043, because then you'll have this all paid for solar farm, and then maybe you put in a bunch of battery storage facilities across the valley and different stuff in Boise in general. Then maybe at that point, yeah, I'll eat crow and say I was wrong. I think this is a really good thing, and we'll have those batteries to kind of help with that difference that solar is having issues with at the time being.